Okay, I think I've managed it. We are
We're both on the coffee shop vibe.
coffee shop. I'm actually in a really cute hot desking open office working space where everyone's, super trendy. and I feel it's super cool. It's in the centre of Edinburgh, so I've been checking out all the really nice little co-working spaces and just getting a bit of inspiration and trying new spaces. This is a good thing, by the way, for the topic of today, adherence. I'm going to be talking about adherence, not just as a bodybuilder, but to all goals, which is exciting. But changing your environment can be very good for adherence. So I'm sure we'll touch on that. But I'm in a new environment today and it's popping. I'm enjoying it.
Popping up. Yeah, today we're going to be talking about adherence and how that relates to physique development, but also, like you say, across the rest of life, and how actually off the back of that, adherence isn't always enough to be successful. And there's lots of other contributing factors that feed into being able to adhere and then be able to do this for a long period of time rather than, short-term goals and then nothing. And when it comes to dieting, bouncing in and out of different diets and things, trying to find those quick fixes is often unsuccessful for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was actually, before we came on, I was looking at a study of some part. It was a group of, I think, about 32 participants who'd done this study, and the study was basically to look at sort of your expectations and how long you think that your goal would likely be done in. Whether it was a 10-week goal, 12-week goal, whether they thought getting to a certain body weight would take this amount of time or that amount of time. And 50% of the people in that study who had unrealistic expectations of their goals dropped out within a year of even starting the diet in the first place. So it just shows you that a lot of people kind of start on this, what is natural excitement and motivation, but then when they realize it gets hard and it's not easy, that's then when that adherence is going to test you, whether you have the right reasons for wanting to do this in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. And it also feeds in nicely to last week's episode where we were talking about back-to-back shows, that pinnacle of a show. And then if you say qualify for the finals, which is why most people would do an unexpected second peak, I guess, it's that, oh, okay, so I might need to adhere for another 2 weeks, or it could be 8 weeks or even longer. I've had, I think probably the longest is like 4 months between qualifying for a show and then doing the finals. And then it's what else is going to help you be able to adhere for another period of time in a diet phase.
Yeah, exactly. And similar to sort of some of the stuff we said on our last podcast, it's shifting the mindset between these goals, because you can't expect the same initial motivation to carry you through. Every goal is going to be very different. Your body might be very different at different phases of this. We all know we have a really high response at the beginning of any kind of diet, because usually you can drop a lot of water quite quickly, see an initial fat loss or weight loss go quite quick. And you start to get into the realms of what we're doing. A pound might take a week and a half, potentially more, to come off, and a pound is nothing. It's so small. But when you start to get to those lower levels and you don't even see a pound drop off the scales for 3-4 weeks potentially, how the hell do you stay on track when your brain is going, I'm doing everything I can, I'm ticking every single box, I'm eating every single gram of food, I'm sleeping on time, I'm training on time, but nothing's moving?
Yeah, I had that in this current prep, and I've had it probably in every prep, because weight loss is very rarely linear. And I think you sometimes forget that, because like you say, the first bit of prep, if you've had a really nice off season as well, you can lose like 4 kilos in a couple of weeks, and it's like, this is really good, and the changes are visible, but you've still got a lot to go. And then the changes become more visible as you go into a prep, and then it can either get to the point where it's almost daily changes, like we mentioned last week, or it could get to the point where, like you say, things hit that plateau, and then you've got to dig even deeper. And if you've already hit stage condition and you've got an unexpected next show, it's like you have these pressures of, can I hit that condition again? How can I do this? And be able to maintain some sort of I guess, quality of life, because at this point, like we've said before, you know, it's not healthiest of spots for anyone. So it's, I mean, sometimes when I've done it previously and I had that like 4 months, I had a little block of maintenance, and that was quite nice, because actually I felt like that restored me enough to then do, I didn't, you know, I only put on, I think it was about 2.5 kilos. That came off, and then I was back in for the finals, and that went really well. But you know, this point now for me, 6 weeks, it's another 6-week dig is quite it's long but short, so it's a very weird space.
Yeah, and what that you just mentioned there, having like a little break of maintenance or a little kind of pullback. I think some of the strategies that can be utilized by coaches are just generally, if number one thing to adherence is that you want to be eating a diet that's plentiful of foods that fit your dietary preferences. So even if it's a really clean bodybuilding based, you know, plan, your foods can still be things that you enjoy, because baseline, if we just forget the goal for a second, doesn't matter what diet you're on, if you're in a calorie deficit, you'll lose weight. That's it, simple. I know everyone talks about which diet is better and more optimal for that, a higher carb, a lower fat, higher carb, whatever else. But if macro composition is underneath what your body actually needs, for, you know, and energy expenditure is higher, then you're going to lose weight. So then we have to look at, okay, if you can lose weight in a calorie deficit, what do we want to make that calorie deficit up of to ensure that we can maintain as much adherence as possible? So you want to utilize then foods that you really enjoy. So you start by asking a client, right, what's your food preferences? What do you enjoy? What carbohydrates do you like most? If someone really loves basmati rice, I'm not going to put a whole ton of white potato in there. I'm going to use basmati rice because they really enjoy the basmati rice, you know? So it's like, we want to find out what the client's dietary preferences are, what kind of foods they're used to or accustomed to, and also, most importantly, what kind of foods subconsciously or cognitively, when they eat them, release kind of the oxytocin or happy hormone because it's enjoyable, and that can help more than anything.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, and actually what you mentioned there, where you stumbled across that sort of, I guess, the food preferences and how you can adhere to a diet for a longer period of time, you can just make those smaller quantities amongst other foods, like you say, asking clients what their preferences are, and I asked what their dislikes are, which I'm sure you do as well. You know, you don't then give someone a food plan that has foods they don't like and then eradicate all foods they do like, especially at the start of a diet. You know, it's quite surprising that a lot of people you take on, when they actually record the foods they're eating, it's a lot more than they thought. So you don't have to, you know, go really harsh straight away, and they can keep a lot of the foods in that they do enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes people will decide to do a goal like the contest prep and maybe have had no understanding of what that looks like beforehand, but are really excited to do it, and they might have a preconceived idea that that's actually meaning they're going to eat less, for example, or that they're going to eat really bland foods for the next little while, when actually we realize now that we've come a long way from that. We can do a lot more with the diets across you know, to hit all of our micro and macronutrient targets throughout a diet as well. So I think making it, any diet is about making it easy, digestible, enjoyable, foods that they can adhere to, things that they look forward to, so it doesn't feel really like you're doing a diet. And then, of course, something else for adherence, which we've touched on before, is the introduction of potential mini diet breaks, or if you're in a position to hold this and enjoy it, a refeed once a week, or a type of meal of choice, or something that you really look forward to, so it keeps you on that Monday to Friday strict to plan, enjoy something off plan maybe on your Saturday, and that boost of enjoyment then helps carry over the energy into the rest of the week, and therefore you've got that momentum and that, you know, that drive to continue going because of the psychological boost you get from that as well. So these are things that can help with adherence too, rather than just doing like what Angie does, and my partner, who is pretty diehard with his diet, which is quite mad, but he just won't touch a thing at all for the entire, you know, potential 40 weeks, and that takes a certain kind of mindset.
Yeah, it's
we have our
rich.
differences of opinion on whether that's a good way to do it or not, but you know.
Yeah, I've found definitely in this part of my prep, so probably the last maybe 6 weeks when the deficit became a lot harder, that it's been really nice to just eat the rinse and repeat on the same days, and slightly vary it. If say I'm on the road or something, it might be a slightly different variation of chicken. It doesn't get much easier than that, but it's very easy because every day, the night before I go, that's meal 1 2 3 4 done, and then it's done for the next day, and I just keep that going. And it's been really cool to do that. And then when we did the peak for the show, I was like, oh God, I've got to put everything in my fitness pal again. I've got to weigh more things out. And it was like, God, it's quite easy in the fact of preparation when you are on the lower calories, because you're not really eating much. So it made it really easy. And I'm just in this rinse and repeat. So it was almost like a little stressor in itself. Although it was nice to have some more food, it was like, I guess I sort of thought, oh my God, when I go back into off season, because you've got that option for more variety, and I'd like to mix it up with, you know, different food sources if I can, different fish, all of these types of things.
Yeah.
Use my fitness pal or whatever, you've got to scan everything in, you got to measure it all. And it was like, oh God. So it's like a full-time job in a different way.
Yeah, 100%. And you touched on something there about like different, did you say spices or different way of preparing it just there?
Yeah, different ways to have, like, even different carb sources, you know, like you said, rice, potatoes, but then if you wanted to include some sourdough bread or, you know, different things, it's quite nice to vary those things rather than have the same things like I do at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And like another way, I mean, satiation is huge for adherence. So, you know, making your foods actually look visually nice on your plate. So making an effort to make it actually look good, and also using in a calorie deficit what you have available to you for flavor. So dry spices, mustard, the skinny sauce brands, for example, salt, pepper, paprika, cumin, all of the different dry spices you can think of, anything that you kind of like experimenting with to actually really kind of make your food taste good. And that way, and you'll figure things out that you really like that will be your go-tos. And you'll find that you'll start to really look forward to that one particular meal because of the taste, the variety, and maybe how it looks on the plate. I mean, we've all been there where you've bulked out your porridge with tons and tons of water and microwaved it like 6 times to blow it up. You know, like we've all done that. But there's a reason we do that. You know what I mean? But like we all do these. Yeah, I mean, like in the prep phase, we find these ways of volumizing our food, or even in just a general person's diet when they're in a deficit to try and lose body weight. We find ways of packing our plate so it looks a lot fuller than it actually is calorie-wise, because visually that tells your brain, I've eaten enough, you've eaten loads, so it keeps you satiated for longer. So these things are so linked, like how you feel and what you're eating is intrinsically linked with what visually you're telling your brain, and taste what your palate is telling your brain as well. So finding ways of making it taste good, finding ways to make it look good, packing out with veggies, you know, stuff that's really low calorie. It depends on what your coach, kind of what strategy your coach uses around veg. I have a pretty open-handed policy on that. Like, you know, 250 grams is your baseline. If you want to top it up, go for it. Fibrous veggies I kind of equate for across the week. So you can, there's stuff we can do here for adherence and satiation, which will keep you on the diet for longer and will be a happier person whilst you're doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And earlier you mentioned scale weight. I think it's quite a valid point as well to think about, you know, if you are in a deficit, like you say, you are going to be losing body fat. But what you've got to realize is if you're going to contest prep, low body fat levels, that, you know, it's very, very easy to hold some water, or if you have your menstrual cycle, or, you know, contributing factors that are going to almost mask the scale weight. But there's no way, if you're in a deficit, you're going to be putting on body fat. But you get into this sort of negative thought process, if the scales aren't going down every day or every few days, that it must mean that you're putting on fat, or, you know, something's going wrong. But then that's when the adherence can unfortunately be determined by a lot of people, and they start to think, oh, well, you know, what's the point? Is it working? And you go completely irrational because you get in your own head.
Yeah, and so what you're talking about there is making sure that we've got tools for tracking progress, for literally tracking the progress. So, you know, one of the major, and I see this all the time, like one of the major reasons that people give up on their diet is because they feel like they're not making any progress, and they feel like they get lost in sort of not knowing where they're going, or not knowing like where they've come from, because maybe they're not in the moment, like you say, rationally able to reflect on, okay, week 1 I looked like this, and week 6 I looked like this. You know, they're maybe not at that point where they can do that. They've not got someone pointing that out to them, which is why I really do this. I do this a lot, especially with my new clients, which is, here we are, week 1. We need to 100% have realistic expectations. This is not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a good long process that we're going to have to go through to get you there. But I am going to be making clear references to trackable progress points, you know, like statistics that we can use, scale weight, visual changes through your check-in photos, your measurements that you're taking, you know, girths around all areas. But then I'm also going to track your menstrual cycle and what happens around that time of the month, so that you don't lose your head when you have that, you know, mid-month bloat and you start to freak out, because that's where a lot of things happen, for especially for women at that time of the month. You know, we might other trackable sort of things that we might use is your pedometer. We might track your heart rate. The fitter you get, the lower your heart rate comes down. So all of these kind of data set points allow us to go in that moment of, nothing's changing. I'm not losing anything. Okay, no, that's not the truth, because my measurements have come down significantly since week 1. My weight might have stayed the same, but I am completely a different shape looking at my photographs, you know. So it is really, really important to have tracking points. And even if you're doing this yourself, you need to hold yourself accountable to that. If you've got a coach, they should be pulling you up on that as well.
Yeah, and also another thing that can cause potential scale weight is also, you know, training. If your volume of training is going up, you're in a deficit, and most people are going to end up peaking up, you know, things like cardio. And I find, you know, most leg days, the next day my scale weight can go up slightly from the inflammation off the back of that, and then the next day it goes back down. But when that first started happening, I used to think, I've trained legs really hard, how have I not lost weight? And then you realize it's your body's response to training, and you're up against this deficit. You know, it happens in off season as well for me, but, you know, particularly in a diet phase when you're monitoring weight much more closely, it's things like that you maybe wouldn't know about, you know, the effects of training on that.
Yeah, you just wouldn't, you know, you wouldn't put kind of 2 and 2 together, like the DOMs are so sore, and that's, you know, a huge amount of that is the breakdown of the muscle tissue, and it's debris around the muscle tissue, which also equates to a lot of water and a bit of, you know, scar tissue in a way. It's like you're breaking it. I always, again, back to my visuals, anyone who watches YouTube, you'll know I fling my hands around. But you're essentially doing, whenever you're training, you're essentially doing this to your muscles. So you're pulling these muscle fibers apart, and then they have to repair. And as they repair, because you've expanded and you're growing, they have to utilize, you know, all the carbohydrate, all of the blood, all of the proteins, all of the synthesizing of that area. And it's like, if you hurt something, it's swelling, it's inflammation whilst it has to repair. And although it's on a micro level, the fascia of the muscle is very painful, and it requires a lot of kind of blood focus to those areas to repair. So you're going to get a lot of water retention from just that. So it completely makes sense, but you do have to sometimes explain these things. But that was a really interesting point you just made there about training itself. Training is another trackable measure. You know, some of my clients will go, I'm not putting any muscle on, I'm not growing. And yet they started on maybe a 60 kilo deadlift, and then they're now hitting 120. You know what I mean? And you kind of go, you cannot increase and progress to that lift strength without accruing muscle tissue. It's impossible. It's physically impossible. So that's a huge marker as well when you're doubting, you know, if you look bigger or whatever else, and you're in your off season, your numbers are going up. Don't doubt if you're stronger, you're growing.
Yeah, because of course, you know, if you do start to doubt yourself on this type of journey, that is going to feed directly into your adherence and your motivation to do that. And we said before jumping on the pod, you know, motivation alone, I would say, isn't enough to, especially a contest prep. You know, it's not enough to contribute to you being successful and being able to get to stage condition, even get on stage, because there's going to be days where you wake up and you think, today is not my day.
Just not my day.
And it's not for any reason in particular, but you know, especially when you are hitting those, you know, hard points of a deficit, some days you wake up and you think, like, it's not that you even want to stay in bed because you're not, you know, sleeping's affected and what have you, but you're just like, my body just doesn't feel like it's my own right now. Every day there's so many tasks that we all have to do alongside bodybuilding as well, just to function as a normal human, and it's those tasks you think, oh god, how can I wiggle out of these?
Yeah, how can I avoid these like the plague? I know yeah, I mean, we are understandably more anxious during a phase where we're being more restrictive. So these sorts of ins and outs that you're talking about, they all just become a little bit more arduous. The body is trying to shut those non-exercise related activities down to preserve energy. So there's going to be days where it's going to be really hard and you're just dragging your ass through the whole day. You know, you're just dragging yourself through that day to get from pillar to post. And some of that might be just genuinely because of the fatigue of the diet. Some of it might be because you're hungry and you're trying to keep your mind off things. Some of it might just be because, you know what, that day you just don't give, you know,
Bad day.
I can't swear in here, guys. It's a posh Edinburgh workspace. keep it
Professional.
Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. Like you're gonna have those days where it's just like really, really challenging, and that's, you've just got to allow it to wash over you and hope, you know, wake up the next day and hopefully that's a bit better. But something I was thinking about there whilst I was talking about ways to maybe manage those in betweeny bits. You know, hunger. We touched on hunger less on our last podcast, but identifying sort of what your hunger, I call this the hunger window in my team. So you might be someone who wakes up and you're really, really hungry in the morning, or you might be someone that doesn't wake up hungry and doesn't really like eating breakfast at all, but you might be, you know, your window of hunger might be somewhere around the evening, maybe it's midday when you have a bit of a slump, you're looking for something snacky. And I talk about sort of this process of how can you adhere in those really horrible crunch times of hunger. Split your meals up. Like see if your coach gives you like 5 meals, don't worry about taking half of one of those meals and maybe putting it somewhere else in the day. As long as you're internally eating the whole calorie intake you're meant to have across the course of the day, split them up to where you most need them. If you know you're really, really hungry in the evening, don't eat all your calories in the first part of the day, bank some of them and have it later on. So this is just, again, another like little hack that sometimes you get given a plan, don't you? And I've been a fool for this as well. You get given a plan and you literally just eat it exactly the way it's written down, and you don't think, actually I could, as long as I'm leaving enough time between meals. A good rule of thumb I tell my guys is around 2 to 2.5 hours between meals. As long as I'm sort of giving a rough amount of time, that meal I have in the afternoon, which is maybe, I don't know, 300 grams of potato, I might just take 150 and split that into 2 and have 2 slightly smaller meals and have it at a time that I really need it in my hunger window, so that I know that I'm going to protect myself from getting into a sticky point within my head and it becomes harder.
Yeah, I definitely did that when the deficit went much harder. I decided to go from 5 meals to 4, and I try and prolong eating in the morning to, I probably don't eat till 9:30 or 10, and then I eat again at 1:32, about 5:30, and then sort of 8:30, 9 o'clock. And that works really well. And in between that, I have, you know, coffee, a Pepsi Max, you know, these simple things that make your day. Like every hour there's sort of something that I can consume that's enjoyable, that I like, and it helps me just box off each day. And then of course, if it's a training day, you're going to the gym for a couple of hours, so that's one of those gaps, because I walk to the gym, train, walk home, do my posing, and then I eat again. So there's definitely a lot of substance in structuring your day so that it suits you being able to adhere to your diet more easily. Backloading things are quite good. So if you can go for, you know, a big amount of your steps in the morning, say you can do your training, do things in the morning. That's quite a nice way to do it as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think, again, adherence comes back to routine. You teach your body loves being like a oiled mechanical machine. It loves it. You know, it likes knowing when up at the same time. It likes knowing when you're eating at the same time. It likes knowing when you're going to bed, when you're moving, when you're working. It loves to have a really clear set of expectations of itself. And if you give it that, you will minimize the points where things can go a bit mental. You know, I've had a client this week or the last 2 weeks where she's been doing a lot of travel with work, and it's totally messed up her routine. And it's the most stressed I've ever seen her, purely because her routine, she's come out of a routinal environment. And so things have been a lot more challenging, and she's really doubted herself, you know, like through it all, purely just because routine was disrupted. So, you know, I know some things, if you have to go away for work, etc., there's ways of managing it, but there's no doubt that those things do play havoc. We are creatures of habit, and when we're razor sharp focused on a goal like competing or fat loss, and you really want to do it justice, those things can totally throw you off. So that's just something.
Just being out on the road, isn't it? Yeah. There's so many examples of times when I thought, oh, okay, like in the past, you know, oh, okay, I'll be all right, I'll grab something on the road or whatever. And I think we mentioned it quite some time ago on the pod, you know, things like service stations and places like that, they don't have the prep friendly foods available. And if you do get stuck in a traffic jam or something, you know, it can really, really scupper your thoughts and processes for that whole day. And then if you have got something that's not ideal, you've then got to, you know, reduce your macros in the evening, say, and then you wake up the next day and you're annoyed that you did that the day before. You didn't take stuff with you. So it's definitely in the preparation of having some backup stuff, even, you know, some whey powder and a banana, you know, whatever it's going to be in the car, because also, you know, when you're traveling in the heat, you don't want to take foods that are potentially going to be affected by that. So then that's another thing in your mind where you think, oh, well, I won't take stuff, I'll get stuff fresh. But actually having a backup like something, just a way can see you through till you can get a meal.
Oh, massively. Like having things in your bag in case, even if it's not the exact thing that's meant to be on your plan, but it's just a protein snack or a veggie snack or something that you can just literally grab if you're in that position. It's so much more helpful, because there's nothing worse than being at like the service stations in the UK are absolutely appalling. There's no consideration for health. Well, there's just no consideration for health. Like, it's crazy. I went to the Netherlands on a really nice long weekend trip, like just a couple of weeks back there, and it's just such a health conscious society. You know, at every corner there's like, you know, just something within a cafe that's a healthy option. And it was really refreshing, and I just kind of opened my eyes to how heavily in the UK we are focused on processed foods, you know, junk foods, and we don't have a lot of options when we're out and about. So it does make things very difficult for the health conscious person. So you do just need to take a little bit more ownership, or when you're traveling or when you're going to a social event as well. Adherence, that's that's a situation where adherence can fall off a lot of the time. You know, planning ahead with social events, like if you're going to a restaurant, looking at the menu well ahead, or if it's a situation where you can take your own food with you, take your own appropriate food with you, you know, that's something that's going to really help your adherence. Telling your nearest and dearest around you what you're doing, why you're doing this goal, so that they can help you adhere to it. That is critical, because what you don't want to have is people around you who just question you all the time and argue with you about why you're eating certain things, or make you feel embarrassed about it, you know, because that's just going to make you find your own process extremely challenging.
You mentioned there as well about taking ownership. That's massive. You know, being concrete with what your goals are and why you're doing it to the people around you, it's such a big impact compared to if you sort of say, oh well, you know, I'm on a diet, you know, just seeing how it goes. Whereas if you go, I'm on a diet and this is what I need to do, I'm going to be bringing my own food, I'm more than happy to come along. You don't need to worry about me. It's a very different outcome if you take ownership and you're strong with what you're saying. Because people, you know, if you say you're getting into physique development and most of your friends are social friends that you go out drinking with every weekend and you go for meals and what have you, that dynamic is going to change. because you're going to need to potentially change quite a lot of those habits to improve your lifestyle and, you know, your intakes and what have you. And, you know, it's like, if you're going to go out with them, you normally have 8 pints of beer, maybe going, right, today, setting in your mind, I'm only going to have 3, and then cutting it off at 3, and taking control of that. And when people start to say, you know, oh, what are you doing this diet again? Oh, you can't have this, you can't have fun, etc., etc. It's having something to say back to just try and squash that, rather than it become this sort of, I guess, not bullying, but like this mentality at the school where everyone starts to, you know, chip in, and it becomes a pressured environment, which makes you not feel very nice.
Yeah, I could not agree more with that. I think it's like everything, communication is massive, and if you take the step before it can become a thing for you, then you will, well, you're controlling your outcome, you're controlling your environment, and you're not allowing emotions to build up. You're not allowing, you know, things to manifest between people who know you that think there's something wrong with you for doing this goal, or, you know, you're expressing yourself clearly. And when you do that, people feel comfortable. You feel comfortable because you've expressed what's going on. People around you feel comfortable because they realize that they don't have to kind of go to the extreme notion as to why you might be changed. People are so funny. Like they'll latch onto all sorts of reasons as to why you might want to completely transform your life. Oh, it's because she's having a midlife crisis, or oh, it's because she's just broken up with XYZ. It could never just be, here's a woman who's just decided, you know what, no, I'm going to take control of my health and my happiness. People are always looking for external reasons as to why you might want to change something quite dramatically about yourself. So to quash those things, clearly explain to not everyone, but those who you really need to, and exactly what you just said, it helps them understand, and it helps you feel comfortable then, you know, whacking out your Tupperware box or having a really fresh, clean salad on a bougie wine lunch rather than a, you know, burger and chips, for example. So these are all really, really important things. And I think, if I'm honest with myself, it took me a really long time to get to that point, because I always used to kind of hide away and pretend like, oh, like just not talk to people about it, because it felt easier just keeping myself in a little corner of my Tupperware box and not telling anyone about what was going on, because I felt like a bit embarrassed myself. Then I did actually talking about it. And then the second I started to do that, it became a lot easier to actually just be who I am and own health. I love health so much. I love it. I love feeling healthy. I love putting good stuff in my body. And I'll often joke with my friends like, oh, you're having your poison again. And they'll all laugh at me because I try and piss them off.
But sometimes you've also got to have that spin on it, you know, be a little bit light-hearted with it. It doesn't all need to be, you know, when people are maybe saying comments and things, like, you can take it negatively, or you can take it with a pinch of salt, and just, you know, it is what it is. People that aren't educated on what it takes to go into physique development, they can feel almost threatened by that, and maybe not even realise, you know, because they're not maybe in control of their own stuff. And it doesn't have to be a negative, but if you can educate them and try and help them understand a little bit, it could have a really big impact for those people that are worth using your energies on.
Yeah, I think that's perfect the way you've rounded that up there, because there are people who are genuinely interested, and they sort of see what you're doing and see the changes you're making to your body. They might see you looking more confident, feeling more able to communicate, you know, and then go, I want a piece of that. That looks good. I really want to sort of go there too. And I would welcome that every time having that conversation with those people. I think it's where you have the opposite, which I'm sure we've all been in, and I'm sure some listeners have felt as well, where you feel like sometimes you have to justify what you're doing to certain people, and they don't take maybe your explanation. They'll come back and say something again later, and that's when it becomes a little bit toxic and difficult to deal with, and where you find out who your friends are, because people around you can massively affect your adherence, massively. Because if you feel peer pressured by a certain group of people when you're out on a night out or whatever else, and you don't feel like you have the strength to sort of say no to that, then you're not only obviously letting your own goals down, but you're just, I think there's other deeper rooted issues there. There's self-confidence issues there. There's perhaps like little self-respect for you as well. Like there's a few things going on there, and I think it's really important to sort of take a good look at the reasons why certain things make you feel uncomfortable. If somebody is trying to put their insecurities onto you, and taking a moment, taking a step out and going, is this going to affect my adherence? Is this going to drag me down into doing something that, maybe having that night out on the town or whatever else, and you're going to wake up the next day feeling rubbish and you've maybe broken your diet and your goal? Is it worth that? Most of the time when you're really changing your body and your life, it's not, but we do it sometimes because we feel like we should. So yeah.
I also think as well, it's quite a valid point that, I mentioned earlier about people say, oh, you're on another diet. And I think that then almost builds a lack of self-confidence in yourself to be able to commit to another diet, because people have seen you diet multiple times. And if you haven't been successful, or you've got to a certain point and then you've stopped, and then you're going to try again, it could be an easy way to not try again, because you're thinking, well, everyone's going to think I'm on another diet. But you've got to take that ownership, you've got to take that control, and find a diet that's going to work for you. Find a diet that's realistic for your schedule, for your lifestyle, and then, prove to those people that you can adhere and you can do it. But rather than use it as like a negative or maybe a pullback, use it as a little bit of fire, use that as fuel to keep you going, and to go, actually, I've done it this time and I'm going to continue to do it.
Yeah, 100%. That's the sort of put your big girl pants on and own it. It's just, you're not doing anything. I mean, of course, people's opinions and perspectives, they do filter in at times. You can never block them out fully. That would be, that would mean we're not human, because things do bother us from time to time. But whatever you decide to put in your body or do with your body is your choice. And if you think, if this is your fifth diet, but actually this approach that you've tried with this particular diet is working and the other 4 didn't, so what? Like, this is your thing, this is your drive, you just focus on being the best version of you and doing that. And then things like when you do slip up, or people see you slipping up or not maybe fulfilling on a plan before, and then they're like, oh, just another diet, like you've just said, or oh, here we go again. You need to just forgive yourself when you've fallen down, not let other people's opinions decide your fate. Let things go and keep moving on. And don't criticize yourself. I think we get into this pattern if we fall off the diet, or we feel like people around us see us maybe fail, that it means we haven't. You just need to start over again, not beat yourself up about what's gone. So what, something, maybe you slipped up, maybe you didn't follow through with something, and now you're trying again. In order to succeed, you have to try again, right? That is the saying. So picking yourself up and just focusing on, what can I do better? What can I, put all my energy and intention into making this process a little bit easier for myself, and moving forwards will greatly benefit you. Just don't give up on yourself. I always say this to my guys, you're not a failure because you've fallen off your diet or you've messed up. You're not a failure. This is just life. We're all human beings. We make mistakes sometimes. So what can we do to own that mistake and get even more resilient?
Yeah, and move forward. Because let me tell you, even when you are successful in this sport, you still get people saying, oh, you're going to do that again. So some people you're never going to please. You can win accolades in the sport and people will still go, do you have to do that again? And it's like,
yeah,
need something quite phenomenal for my own, development within my sport. And, you're feeling high on life and you still get those comments. So whether it's you've done diets before and you're almost a bit scared to go into another one because of what people will say, or whether it's you've done a prep, you've been successful, and people think that that's, oh, okay, well, you don't need to do it again, because they see it that it's like this negative thing, because it is hard, and your appearance does change quite dramatically when you do a stage prep, and people can become concerned and what have you. But no matter whether you're successful or unsuccessful and you're trying again, people always have to have their input, but that is their own problem. It's not yours.
Humans are so harsh.
I even have comments, are you not going to have babies yet and things? And I think I don't really feel like it's your decision to tell me when I should have babies. oh well, your biological clock and things like this, and I'm thinking, I'm well aware of of these things.
You've got an
and
alarm clock next to your bed.
Yeah, and it's often from a place of, I guess, care. And when people make these comments, the people around you that are, your close ones, particularly family and things like this. Friends, we have a bit more option to choose, whereas family is family. But again, I always go back to, please just try and educate them, because that's the only tool really, other than, being quite blunt and potentially cut them out of your life, that we have to try and bring them on board, try and get across what it means to you to do this, how important it is to you. And their support, then, maybe you don't need their support as much. If you find that when you're telling them that you're sharing the information with them, they're not very receptive, then you can just keep it fairly minimal on that side of your life and immerse in other things with those people if you're going to keep them around you.
Yeah. Again, it comes back to that key word, resilience, and building. So you're training everything else, you're training that resilience muscle every day. When you decide to do a goal like this, you're training, you are building that resilience muscle. And think of that as this, like, from the top of your head right through your core, all the way down to your abdomen, through your feet, grounding you into the floor. That is resilience, and you need to ground it every time something comes in and tries to throw you off track, through every single point, like every single sort of subtopic that we've given here under adherence. At the core of that is resilience, at the core of it. So it's not thinking, it's kind of coming away from all these sort of terminologies and thoughts that people have about diets. And diet's a pretty toxic word in itself. We need to almost not think of it as a diet, because that in itself is a bit of a red herring for so many people.
It's more like a life.
Yeah, but it's saying like, oh, I'm on a diet. It's like this word diet, it seems to be, kind of almost challenging to yourself before you've even begun. You're just shifting behaviors and habits, and you're changing your mindset around who you want to be, how you want to feel. You're making choices that are conscious, again, not subconscious, because a lot of the time we go through life eating unconsciously. You want to feel like, what's the word? You want to feel empowered by all of the delicious, clean choices you're putting into your body, and think of this change as something to empower you to be a more optimal, awesome human being, rather than, oh, I'm choosing a diet. I'm on a diet. The diet sucks. It's reframing what this is all about. So it's easier said than done, I know. And I know we bang on about it's the way you think about it. And some days you just can't. You can't think about it positively at all. But I'm a massive advocate for coming away from what we think it should feel like, because we all hear in the bodybuilding industry, oh, it's so hard, it's so difficult, and doing it, and starting to think about, I'm going to decide how I feel about this and what this is about for me. So instead of I'm on a diet, you need to think of, I am choosing to nourish my soul from the inside out, and I'm going to stay resilient, and I'm going to encourage all of you lot to encourage and nourish your soul as well, because it's way happier in my camp over here, by the way, because I look badass.
Yeah, for sure. And also, feeding into the adherence today, thinking about your goal and goal setting along the way. If your goal is to compete, setting some mini goals along the way, so that you don't, when your goal is massive and I almost think of that little person inside those Russian dolls, or the little one in the middle, and then to evolve into the bigger one is when you get to that pinnacle goal. What's going to get you there? Those smaller stages, and even daily wins, the things that you do on a daily basis, nourishing that, realize, bloody hell, what am I putting into this goal? Like you mentioned last week, if you were to write down Sarah the bodybuilder in the middle and all the things that contribute to being a bodybuilder, there's so many things that we do that we just
so
do.
Much. Yeah, totally.
It's mental.
Like, I've drunk tons of water today. Tick. I've prepped my food. Tick. I have put all my cucumber into little slices in my little lunchbox. Tick. I have bought a soda stream, so now I can make nifty sugar-free drinks at home. tick.
Steps.
I've done the steps. I've listened to 3 podcasts. I've educated myself on a new topic. I've thought of really cool how to make your salads like look and feel and taste amazing. And I bought that, and I now can apply some of those tips to the salads that I'm having throughout every single day for the next 20 odd weeks or whatnot. I've had a phone call with a friend and I've told her all about what I'm doing so that she gets it as well, so she can keep me on track when we go out for a bougie night. All of these things are like so important. The little micro things we do every day. And it's in every walk of life. Like, we go through life thinking we're not good enough, we've not done enough, we can't stick to our goals. We just have to be much more present and much more kind to ourselves and what we're doing, and not beat ourselves up when things are a little bit more difficult. So on the days you're going, I look crap, I'm bloated, I look like a whale, I can't even keep my eyes open, I've got brain fog, my work shit, I'm so dizzy, I literally can't even move, I don't even want to walk to the toilet. Like, when you've got those days, which we all do, it's okay to wallow in your thing.
I say that.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay to have a shit day.
It's okay to have a shit day. Like, do that. Have it. Cry. Mope. Have a little whinge to yourself. Do whatever you need to do. But just get out of it as well. And own getting out of it. Like, don't allow yourself to become that martyr of a person that everything's shit and everything's negative. Start looking at small things first that are around you, and if it takes a wee bit to get out of that, if you are maybe of a more of a negative mindset or more of a depressive thinker, which I'm not saying is bad at all, because I think we all have tendencies to feel like that sometimes, but we need to start just exactly as you've said, the small things daily, making that cup of coffee that you love in the morning and going, this is starting my day well, today's going to be a better day. Moving across to the fridge, preparing meals, or if they're already prepped, looking at that prep and going, I did that. That's my prep in there.
That's me. And also, if
yourself, back yourself.
Yeah. And if you have to restructure a day, on Monday, the 2 days after my show, I had to go and lay down because I was like, what, we said you forget about how you actually feel a couple of days after. And that was like for an hour and a half. And then normally I'd be like, well, I would have done X amount of steps by now. I would have done this. I would have done that. I would have done this. And I was like, okay, so this evening I will be doing an evening walk, whereas normally I do it in the day or in the morning. But that's cool because I've still ticked all my boxes, as it were. So sometimes just give yourself a break and know that even, a weekly average of steps, if it was steps, say, and one day you did your target's 15 and you did 12, and the next day you did 16, you can weekly average it. There's things like that. It doesn't have to be so, I guess, isolated when something comes up or you're not feeling great, because there are going to be times when that does happen when you're on a diet. So you've got to be a little bit realistic and be kind to yourself during these times.
100%. I mean, it's just yeah, we live in a sort of world where there's a lot of pressure, and I think we make everything so final and total. Like, when you've had a shit day, it's like life is done. Oh, I've had so many days like that where it's so dramatic. Like, in my head I'll be like, I'll think about something that's not gone well, and then I'll go, and what if this happens? And then what if that happens? And then, oh my God, what am I going to do there? And then suddenly I get to this worst case scenario where I'm like destitute, have no life, have no home, have no nothing. I'm like, hang on a sec, wheel it back in. Has that ever happened? No. Is it going to probably happen unless I've got something to do with it? No. Like, you know what I mean? It's like we do catastrophize, and it is a cognitive distortion, and it's very common in everything that we do, whether that's in relationships, in your job, in the goal like this that we're talking about. And when something doesn't go wrong, we amplify it and add arms and legs. Before we know it, you're saying that the goal that you can do, you can't, when that is not the case. So we have to bring back in alignment and rationalize and look at the things you can control again, and those micro small things that we are doing well to boost your to just get real, really, and go and remember and go, okay, no, I've just got on stage maybe a few weeks ago. and I've got another one to come up. I'm gunning towards. This is a challenge a little here, but does it mean I can't do it? Absolutely not. Does it mean, you know, like that you're going to be crap and not be able to fulfill the goal? No, because you've already got evidence that you've just done it. So evidence, tracking, adherence tools, and being present, leaning on people that understand, speaking to your coach, communicating, all these things, extremely, extremely vital when you're losing your shit.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I just remember Kendall put in a question. So I did a live with Matt, and she was saying
Awesome.
about, does it, yeah, love Kendall. Shout out to RG. You said about, does it add pressure documenting my prep before I compete and then documenting it after? And I guess to a certain degree it does add pressure, because, you know, you want to do well in the sport and what have you. But I really like pressure. So if you're someone that responds to pressure, it can actually be quite nice to document it and tell more people and actually externalize what you're going to do and be a bit more open about it. Like we said, taking ownership. But also I find that, you know, sometimes sharing with people, you can get really nice comments back that actually help you adhere, because I sometimes wake up to a message on Instagram from someone I've been talking to on there, and it will say like, you're going to kill today, you're smashing it or something. And I think, oh, that's good. So again, you know, looking for people around you that will potentially just feed into those harder times. Just a message sometimes can just give you a little bit of a pep in your step. And like you do with your group calls and things, you know, you're networking with the right people, that can feed into you being able to see this go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the people you tend to follow who talk about their journeys, etc. I mean, I've watched some people's journeys to the stage. I don't watch a lot of people's, but I've watched some, and I gravitate always towards people who are really real about it. I think because I've been through it, obviously you've been through it yourself. So sometimes it's hard to listen to journeys that are just not quite as transparent as I think a lot of people should be. That's why I always do this with you, where I'm like, you know, these podcasts are really important to keep things really transparent, really open, really real, and to explore lots of different thoughts about the industry and also how to do this really well and with the right people in your corner. But the other side of that, when you open it up, and to answer another flip side to Kendall's question, you've got to be ready to put yourself out there and allow you to follow your prep. Like, Sarah, you are so experienced, like you're a very confident speaker, you're very real, you're very open, you're very like honest about how you found all of this. But if you're not ready to sort of put that out, and you're sitting there going, should I document this? Should I get it out there? Like, and again, doing your pros and cons list, the pros of doing it are this, but then the cons are like this, and there's like way more cons at that point. Maybe don't do it yet. And I'm not saying that because I don't think your journey is amazing and that you should share it with the world. I'm saying that it can also go the opposite way, where you start to open up about a lot of things, and you might not have, going back to your resilience muscle, you might not have built that strong enough yet. And the bodybuilding world can be a very hard place. Like, and just forget bodybuilding, just social media in general can be a very, very difficult place to navigate if you're not ready for that. And if you start to put your whole life out online, or everything you're doing, you're going to have to be okay with the other side of what will come with that. Because a lot of us bloggers or people who have done all this stuff online, a lot more people than me, because I don't do a lot, but I know I've got some close friends in the industry who do. They vlog all the time. They're putting their life up every day on YouTube videos and Instagram. And I've seen their comments. I've seen their YouTube chats, and they're intense. It's not all happy days. It's a lot of like backlash too. And even some of them who are so confident. One who's extremely current right now, she talks about it all the time, how hard it is. So you got to be ready. Be ready. Build the resilience.
Yeah, maybe put a little bit out there, see what you get, see how you feel, and then it's a funny one, isn't it? Because like we've said before, you know, don't have those people on your social media, or you can actually, you know, if someone's following you and you don't want them to follow you, you can remove them as well. You know, I like to think I don't really have people following me that aren't going to be the right people, and I don't follow people that I don't gel with. for that
Yeah.
reason, because I want my feed to be, like you say, you know, you go through and you have interest in what's coming up. You're not thinking, oh, here we go again, this person's, you know, saying things that makes me feel really negative. So if you're in a position where your social media is fairly controlled by you, and you know you want to test the water, you can. But I must agree, you know, it has taken a bit of time to be able to expose myself fully, because it is definitely an added pressure. But like I say, I do like
yeah, no, it's like, absolutely, I say, do you do it, do whatever you want to do, but just be ready for those things as well. And when swinging right back to kind of the whole topic, what you let in, and I know we touched this, but what you on this last time, but what you let in social media wise, you know, the people you're following, that can affect your adherence also. If you are constantly focused on watching someone, you know, who's extremely good, maybe highly competitive, maybe putting stuff out every single day, and you're admired, inspired, but also extremely petrified of, you might start manifesting, I'll never be good enough, I'll never be as good as that, do you see what I mean? So that's a big part of it, of managing, again, external things that might come in and make you start to self-doubt. So as soon as you start to feel that, you need to manage it, so that you don't fall off your goals because of something that doesn't really even matter in the grand scheme of things, you know?
Yeah, like you said
again,
last session, you know, people searching for people's downfalls. It's like,
yeah, it's just awful.
Like,
there's a term for that. It's called it's called Schadenfreude. It's an actual term where you get pleasure from someone's fails.
Right.
You know, so, you know, when somebody does, you know, somebody that you want to see fail at something, then you get some pleasure out of that. Yeah, go look up guys, Schadenfreude. I'm not making this up. I promise.
Yeah, it's not good, but hopefully, you know, over these couple of episodes, we've got that message across, because we both feel very passionate about that. You know, you don't.
Can you tell?
Have to follow people. Yeah, I used to feel so like, oh God, can I unfollow that person? They probably don't even know you've unfollowed them, and they're not. I love
the unfollow. The unfollow button is my best mate. No, I'm joking. I'm being cheeky now, but no, it's a good thing to use, guys. Like, don't sit there and go, should I not? Just do it. Nike made that statement for a reason. When you start to procrastinate about something, just do it. Just don't even let the thought come in. That's, again, comes back to building a resilience. When you get better at deciding, making decisions quickly without procrastination, you feel so empowered. You start to go, I'm not going to let that bother me. Done. Case closed. That happened. Okay, that was a bit shit. Why am I feeling a bit shit about that? Right, now I understand why I'm feeling a bit shit about that. Done. Finished. Move on. So you've got to start compartmentalizing to help you keep emotionally stable, especially when you're in something as extreme like a contest prep, where your emotions can go flying all over the place. If it's starting to cause like little niggly, icky feelings, get rid of it.
Yeah. And be confident in your decisions, you know, be confident in your goal, your capabilities, and you're going to grow throughout these processes. You know, when you embark on your first diet, you learn so many skills that are going to transfer to the rest of your life. I always say to my clients, you know, we're never going to come back to this point where we're starting now, because it's almost impossible. You can't unlearn everything, even if, you know, they've worked with you for a set amount of time and then went off into their own life. Something like, you know, increasing their protein intake over a day, they're going to remember forever. You know, there's little things like that you're never going back to where you started. So even if you have to do this slowly and work at your goal for a little bit longer, that's also cool. You know, you don't have to rush into this. It's a lifestyle shift and a lifestyle change. And it's about, you know, setting your goal and actually going, I am going to get there, having the self-belief, and then taking those actions to contribute to you getting there successfully. And there's so much that's possible through physique development. It blows my mind what you can do.
Yeah, it does, and just genuinely looking good, feeling good. When you walk in, say you work in an office, you know, say you work here, like where I am right now, and you walk in and you've just bought a really nice outfit from, I was going to say Next. What, like, where did next come from? Where did next just come from?
Let's go Top Shop.
let's go Reese, if you like Reese. I quite like Reese. So see you go in, you buy a really nice outfit, you put it on, feel banging. You've done all this work, regardless, forget your goal on the stage, right? You look good, you feel good, and you go into a restaurant or a bar or your office, or maybe you meet your partner on a Friday for just, I don't know, a cinema date or whatever else. You feel ace, and it raises your confidence, it raises your cognitive vibe. You feel and look better in yourself because you are in control of this body, you're in this body, and all the work that you've done, like, you're owning it. You're like, I'll look good, I feel good. It's confidence, it's sexy, it's empowering, it's important for females particularly, and guys, to feel like present and happy in their own skin. So what you're doing, remember that it's not just all for the stage, it's for so much more than that. And I often get sad when I see people so totally obsessed just by the look on the stage rather than the process of, I just look killer all the way through this. It's not an egotistical thing, it's an important thing for your own confidence to look at yourself in the mirror and go, like, you know what, even if I don't win a show, I am so proud of what I've done.
And that's why it's important to sometimes have smaller goals that contribute to the bigger goal, because if that bigger goal elongates or doesn't happen, when you first thought it would, then you still, I guess, noticed what you've achieved through those smaller goals as you've made your process towards that bigger goal. Because things can change, things happen in life, and adherence in itself, when things get thrown off, if something happens that's quite traumatic, that's going to potentially affect your adherence. So the things that we've spoken about today, the smaller things that contribute to you being able to adhere to a diet in normal life, think of those, if you're going through the tougher times as well. Nourish yourself, take care of yourself, do what you can, don't overreach, be realistic and have a plan.
Have a plan, prepare, plan, execute, and you'll be happy. Everything will be good. Cool. Lots covered there. So adherence, hopefully you've taken a lot of tips away here. If you have any other tips on how you manage to adhere to certain goals when you've been in a sticky spot, I'd love to hear them, because I'd like to learn more about ways in which people, manage when they're struggling. And don't give up.
Yeah, never give up. That's why I've got it tattooed. Never give up, because it's just so true, isn't it? Don't give up on yourself. You can,
no giving up.
Even if your goal has to stall for a little bit, you've already contributed towards that. You've made a decision. You're making changes on the daily to contribute to improving yourself, and that in itself is a massive thing. So be kind to yourself and have a woosah.
Yes, for sure. I love that. Great. Well, until the next one, you guys know what to do. Send us some requests, and as always, Sarah, a pleasure. So let's keep it going.
Peace out, my friend.
Peace out, everyone. Peace out.
See you later.